When you love on yourself and God, there is nothing you can't accomplish. I want to tell you about a woman who is quietly reshaping how Black women think about ambition, rest, and faith. Her name is Maria Davis, and she is not the kind of person who demands attention when she walks into a room. She doesn't need to, because Maria's power is in her presence, her wisdom, her lived experience, and her unshakable belief that high achieving Black women deserve to step out of survival mode and into something softer, something sacred. Maria's work centers on helping women who have spent decades being strong for everyone else finally learn how to be soft for themselves. And what she shared with me during our conversation is the kind of truth that lands gently but changes everything. Today, I want to share what Maria taught me about the intersection of self love, faith, and the audacity to believe that nothing is beyond your reach when those two forces work together. Let me start with a woman you might know, or maybe you don't, but her story is one that stopped me in my tracks when Maria brought it up. Her name is Courtney Adelai, and she built a multi-million dollar hair care brand called The Main Choice. She started in her kitchen, mixing products, documenting her hair journey on YouTube. No investors, no business degree, no safety net, just a registered nurse who was tired of not seeing herself reflected in the products on the shelf. And here's the thing that makes Courtney's story so powerful. She didn't build that business because she was trying to prove something to the world. She built it because she loved herself enough to believe her own hair, her own health, her own confidence mattered. That's self love as a business plan. That's what happens when you stop waiting for permission and start honoring what God placed inside you. Courtney was juggling a full time nursing career, motherhood, marriage, and the emotional weight that so many Black women carry, the weight of being strong for everyone else, the weight of never being allowed to falter, the weight of always having to show up, even when you're empty. But somewhere in the middle of all that, she made a decision. She decided that her well being, her joy, her vision deserved space, and she gave it space. She didn't wait until she had more time or more money or more confidence. She started anyway with $500, a YouTube camera, and faith in God's timing. By 2020, her brand had been acquired, multi-million dollar deal, national retailers, a loyal community of women who didn't just buy her products, they bought into her story because her story was theirs. It was about reclaiming identity. It was about loving yourself loudly in a world that tells Black women to shrink, to be quiet, to be grateful for whatever scraps they're given. Courtney said no to that. And in doing so, she created a movement. Maria said something to me during our conversation that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said, radical self love is a spiritual practice, not a luxury. And I sat with that because we've been taught that self love is selfish, that rest is lazy, that saying no is rude, that putting yourself first is somehow a betrayal of everyone who needs you. But what if the opposite is true? What if loving yourself, truly loving yourself, is the most faithful thing you can do? What if it's the prerequisite for everything God is trying to build through you? Let me tell you about Dr. Jackie. Dr. Jacqueline Walters. She's an OBGYN, a breast cancer survivor, twice, a TV personality, a women's health advocate, and someone who had to learn the hard way that you can have all the titles in the world and still not know how to love yourself. Before cancer, Dr. Jackie was already successful. She had the career, the reputation, the respect, the accolades, but cancer didn't care about any of that. Cancer asked her a different question. Do you love yourself beyond what you do? Do you love yourself when you can't perform, when you can't be strong, when your body is failing and your schedule is irrelevant and your reputation means nothing in the face of mortality? And Dr. Jackie had to sit in that question. She had to choose in real time Whether she was going to keep performing or start healing, she chose healing. She chose therapy. She chose rest. She chose to slow down and invite God into every part of her recovery. Not just the parts that looked good on social media, not just the parts that felt comfortable to share, but the raw, messy, terrifying parts too. And what happened? She didn't just survive, she rebuilt her entire life and career around holistic wellness, mind, body, spirit. She became a voice for Black women's health in a way she never could have if she hadn't first learned to love herself through the hardest season of her life. Maria told me that a real relationship with God expands what you believe is possible. And I think Dr. Jackie's story proves that because when you stop trying to control everything and start trusting God as a daily partner, when you pray and then actually sit in silence long enough to listen, um, you stop leading from fear. You start moving from faith. And faith opens doors you didn't even know existed. Faith whispers possibilities you thought were reserved for other people. Faith reminds you that you are not defined by your worst moments or your deepest wounds. Now, let me tell you about Sarah Jakes Roberts. Because if there's anyone who embodies the idea that self love and faith can turn your lowest chapter into your greatest ministry, it's her. Sarah became a mother at 14. 14 years old, the daughter of a prominent pastor, publicly shamed, privately broken, struggling with depression, failed relationships, and the crushing belief that she had disqualified herself from anything meaningful. For years, she tried to hide, tried to perform, tried to live up to everyone else's expectations while hating herself in private, while believing that her mistakes had written the final chapter of her story. But something shifted. Sarah stopped performing and started receiving. She started receiving God's love for her exactly as she was, messy, imperfect, wounded, ashamed. And from that place of grace, she began to treat herself with compassion. She set boundaries. She forgave herself. She stepped into ministry not because she had it all together, but because she finally believed that God could use her brokenness as a bridge for other women. She finally believed that her story, the one she had been hiding from, was actually the story that would set others free. Today, Sarah leads Woman Evolve, a global movement that fills arenas with women who are tired of pretending and ready to heal. She's a best selling author, a co pastor, a voice that reaches millions. And none of that would have happened if she hadn't first chosen to love herself through her mistakes instead of letting them define her future. Maria said it best during our interview. There is no goal too big when self love and faith work together. And Sarah's life is living proof. Here's what I want you to hear. These women, Courtney, Dr. Jackie, Sarah, they didn't wait until they felt ready. They didn't wait until they had permission. They didn't wait until the world told them they were worthy. They decided. They decided that loving themselves was not optional. They decided that their relationship with God was not a Sunday morning accessory, but a daily partnership, a conversation, a lifeline. And from that foundation, they built empires, they healed communities, they changed lives, they rewrote the narratives that had been written for them. But let's be honest, this is hard, especially for Black women, especially for those of us who have been taught that our value is tied to how much we can carry, how much we can endure, how strong we can be, how little we complain. We've been conditioned to believe that softness is weakness, that rest is irresponsible, that saying no makes us selfish, that asking for help means we're failing. And so we keep going. We keep grinding. We keep showing up for everyone else while our own souls are gasping for air, while our own hearts are breaking, while our own dreams are dying quietly in the corner. Maria and I talked about this during our interview. She said that so many of the women she works with are exhausted, not just tired, exhausted. They've led teams, raised families, held down households, carried communities, built legacies, and now they're ready to shift from constantly grinding to finally grounding in joy, in peace, in softness, in self prioritization. And that shift, that sacred pause, is what the soft girl era is all about. It's not a trend, it's a lifestyle rebellion, a deep exhale from the superwoman script, a quiet but powerful return to softness, rest, self trust, and radical joy. It's the permission slip you've been waiting for someone else to give you, but the truth is, you have to give it to yourself. So, what does this look like practically? How do you actually start loving on yourself and God in a way that changes everything? Maria gave me two simple practices, and I want to share them with you because they're so doable, so accessible, so gentle that you can start today, right now, in the middle of your chaos. First, set aside 10 quiet minutes each day. No phone, no noise, no distractions, just you. And in those 10 minutes, speak kindly to yourself. Out loud or in a journal, say one thing you're proud of, one thing you forgive yourself for, and then talk to God about one specific desire or goal. Not a laundry list, not a grocery list of demands, just one thing. And after you talk, sit in silence, listen, because God speaks in the stillness, and you can't hear if you're always moving, always performing, always proving. Second, at least once this week, make one decision that honors your well being. Say no to something that drains you, or say yes to something that nourishes you, and dedicate that act to God as an expression of love. Because when you honor yourself, you honor the one who made you. And that's not selfish, that's sacred, that's worship, that's obedience. Here's the truth: you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be loud or extroverted or fearless. You can be soft spoken, you can be introverted, you can be scared, you can be unsure, and you can still start. You can still grow. You can still pivot because the combination of caring for your whole self and trusting God's guidance is unstoppable. It doesn't matter if you're starting with $500 in your kitchen like Courtney, or rebuilding after cancer like Dr. Jackie, or healing from shame like Sarah. When self love and faith work together, there is no goal too big. There is no dream too audacious. There is no calling too impossible. Maria Davis reminded me that this is not about perfection, it's about permission. Permission to rest, permission to heal, permission to say no without guilt and yes without apology, permission to believe that you are worthy of the dreams God placed in your heart, not because you've earned it, but because you exist, because you are loved, because you are seen, because you matter. So here's my challenge to you: stop waiting, stop performing, stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Start loving yourself the way God already loves you, fully, fiercely, without condition, without reservation. Treat your relationship with God like the daily partnership it's meant to be. Not a crisis hotline, but a conversation. Believe, really believe that when you love on yourself and God, there is nothing you can't accomplish, because Courtney believed it and she built an empire from her kitchen. Dr. Jackie believed it and she rebuilt her life from the ashes of illness. Sarah believed it and she filled arenas with women hungry for healing. And you can believe it too. Not someday, not when you're ready, not when you're perfect, now, right now, in your softness, in your fear, in your faith, in your uncertainty, in your hope. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not too quiet. You are not too much or not enough. You are exactly where you need to be. And the next step, the one that changes everything, starts with loving yourself enough to take it and trusting God enough to follow where it leads. So take that step. today, this week, this moment, because the world is waiting for the version of you that finally believes she is worthy. And trust me, she is unstoppable.